Well, good morning, everyone, from here at TLP Network Studios, or maybe good afternoon or evening, depending where you're joining us from. You are joining us for our live launch coverage of a historic Rocket Lab mission, Electron's first mission to the lunar orbit, taking NASA's CAPSTONE mission. LiftOff currently on target for an instantaneous launch window at 9:55 UTC or 5:55 a.m. Eastern, and we're going to go through everything we know about today's mission in just a moment. But if it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Zach. I'm the founder and host here at the Launchpad and here at TLP. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together, and we are so glad to have you here joining us from all over the world. Let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. I see we've got Poland, we've got Florida, Arkansas, Texas, Cornwall, England. I've seen we've had New Zealand, Amsterdam, Australia. We've got people all over the world, and it's great to have you all here with us. For those of us here in the North American side of the world, this is a middle of the night launch, but we are very excited for this launch finally to be out on the pad. Fueling is underway, and they are getting ready to lift off in just about 90 minutes time on Electron's first ever mission to lunar orbit with NASA's CAPSTONE mission. CAPSTONE, an acronym for the Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technologies Operation and Navigation Experiment. That's why they call it CAPSTONE. It's a lot easier. But this is the first major pathfinder for the NASA Artemis program, as a lot of the data and research they're going to get from CAPSTONE are going to be crucial to help decide parameters for future Artemis missions in lunar orbit. CAPSTONE is going to go into a very unique near rectilinear halo orbit around the moon, which is an orbit specifically selected by NASA for the Lunar Gateway space station that will be launching the first modules most likely in 2024 on top of a Falcon Heavy. But as always, as we get started, if you guys have questions throughout today's live stream, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad, and we will be answering those live. If you want to jump the queue and be the next one, you can send it in as a super chat. We appreciate your guys' support. We are basically entirely viewer funded, and we want to bring you the best possible space coverage possible. So if you'd like to help support what we do, there's kind of two really big ways you can do that. One, sharing out the broadcast and hitting that like button. It really does do that. And two, if you'd like to become a TLP member, there's some really great perks. Head on over to our Patreon and you can check that out. You can get exclusive TLP member gear, as well as discounts in our shop. You can get early video access, behind the scenes access, and a whole bunch more. To get all the things out of the way that you have to do, because it's YouTube, head on over to Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at TLPN_official to never miss space news as it happens. And as always, it is launch day, which means you can head on over to the TLP shop, use promo code launch day, all one word in caps, and get 10% off of your entire order there. Global shipping is available, and another great way to help support what we do to get our crew at launch complexes around the world as we enter a very busy decade of space exploration, with CAPSTONE really just kicking off the Artemis program here, with SLS maybe just a couple of months behind it. Anton, thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate it. And absolutely shout out and welcome to all of our friends from Angry Astronaut. We are very excited to have Angry joining us here in just a little bit. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And if you guys have questions for Angry and I, you can save those for then. And we're excited to have him joining us in just a few minutes. Lots of people all over the world tuning in, and we're glad to have you here. Here at the Launchpad, for those that are new, we do give full launch coverage of both the big and the little guys, from Blue Aerospace to Rocket Lab to SpaceX and everyone in between, and we're glad to have you here. We also give full coverage of dockings and undockings, as well as test coverage, exclusive one-on-one interviews, and basically all the press briefings to give you guys the best possible place to get all space news as it happens, which means while we are live here tonight, counting down to launch of CAPSTONE, space doesn't stop at the International Space Station. The crew is preparing for the departure of the Cygnus NG-17 spacecraft that's been up there for a little bit. So we will be starting a secondary live stream in about 5-10 minutes here to bring you coverage of that undocking as well. But we're all here for CAPSTONE, so you can keep sending in those questions. Just make sure you tag us at the Launchpad, and we will be answering those. This launch will be the fourth launch for Rocket Lab in 2022. the 27th Electron mission already. And as we said, this is going to be the first deep space mission for Rocket Lab, as well as the first flight of the Lunar Photon. A Lunar Photon is what's going to help place the spacecraft through a number of low Earth orbits to help eject it out to space, to the moon over the course of the next few months. This is going to take some time. This is not going to be like Apollo, where it was just 2 or 3 days, or like what we're going to see with SLS. This is going to take some time. It's going to take about 6 to 7 orbits around the Earth, like big passes around the Earth at different altitudes, where it's going to perform multiple burns to help slingshot it out to the moon. And Rocket Lab will go a little bit deeper into that once their stream gets underway. Once they get there, it's going to enter into an orbit with an orbital period around the moon of actually about 6.5 days. It's going to come down to its closest approach at about 3,000 kilometers, but expand all the way out to 70,000 kilometers, and that's going to occur over the South Pole. It's going to have a lunar eclipse of the sun on every orbit, a 1 hour length of that eclipse as well. So a really unique mission, getting a lot of data for how Lunar Gateway will be able to perform here in the future. Anton says this Halo orbit is new for a lot of us. If convenient, can you explain? Perfect. I saw that question come in and we're basically already in there. So that's great. Thank you so much for sending that in. One of the benefits of doing this type of orbit is the low energy required to get in and out of it, including getting back to Earth down to a lower lunar orbit, down to the surface, of the moon for it. The CAPSTONE has a very minimal amount of delta V, and that is why it's going to take this longer period with multiple burns to exit low Earth orbit over the next couple of days as it works its way towards its lunar Earth ejection out to the moon. And of course, I'm sure Rocket Lab and NASA are going to have some great animations for you guys. If you haven't yet, of course, head on over rocketlabusa.com. They've got a great page there breaking down a bit more about today's mission, but stay tuned as we do expect them to get underway here in about 15 minutes, and we'll patch that in. But we have been following along with Rocket Lab throughout today, and everything has been progressing well through the fueling operations. About 48 minutes ago, we had an update at the T-2 hour mark saying that Electron is preparing to take to the skies. Liquid oxygen was flowing into the Electron rocket, and our favorite black rocket was turning white as it began to prepare for its liftoff. Weather was looking really well for this evening, and it's going to be a rather quick mission. Just 9 minutes after launch, Photon will separate from the Electron's second stage, and the rocket's work will be done. Photon will then take 6 very busy days orbiting and raising ahead of its final ballistic lunar transfer burn, set to put CAPSTONE on a course for the moon. Again, if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad. You're joining us for our live launch coverage of Rocket Lab's Electron CAPSTONE mission in partnership with NASA, taking NASA's cislunar autonomous positioning system technology operations and navigation experiment CAPSTONE to the moon, the first ever time Rocket Lab is doing so. If you guys have questions, you can continue sending those in the chat just by tagging us at the launch pad. It helps us out, flagging those questions so we can answer those as we count down towards launch. Liftoff expected at 9:55 UTC or 5:55 a.m. Eastern. This is an instantaneous launch window due to the parameters of the Electron rocket, needing to make sure they're in exactly the orbit they need to be able to perform these burns over the next 6 days to get CAPSTONE on the correct course. Rocket Lab will be launching from Launch Complex 1A at the Māhia Peninsula in New Zealand. So something we don't normally see with a NASA rocket, but earlier this week we saw a launch out of Australia. Now we're heading on over to New Zealand for a mission with Electron. So great question there, Michael. Thanks for doing that. Missed that one. Normally would have gone over that. Today's payload weighs about 300 kilograms or 660 pounds, and as we said, is launching from Launch Complex 1A. Electron is not going to be reused on this mission, so the first stage will crash into the Pacific Ocean. They are not going to attempt that, and Rocket Lab does not attempt to recover its fairings or its second stage. To give you a little bit of an idea of the size of the Capstone, the spacecraft is a small CubeSat with the size of 34 centimeters by 34 centimeters or 60 by 61 centimeters, and uses a monopropellant hydrazine system for its station-keeping maneuvers. These are also known as their orbital maintenance maneuvers, or OME. Capstone has an S-band antenna on board for communications with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to help do communications with the Deep Space Network back here on Earth. Now, if you're just joining us and you saw the thumbnail or maybe the pinned comment there, we are going to be joined by a very special guest here this evening. We're super excited to have the Angry Astronaut joining us in just a couple of minutes to give some of his thoughts and everything as we count down towards liftoff of NASA's Capstone. So if you guys have questions that you want Angry Astronaut 9 to answer, now's an awesome time to send those in the chat. Tag us at the launch pad and we'll be answering those live. And then once NASA gets started, we will patch them in and listen into Rocket Lab Mission Control for the T-minus 60 minute and counting update all the way through launch and deployment, and then we'll be taking your questions throughout there as well. Capstone, though, has seen a number of delays, the most complex and critical missions generally do, which is the results of these very tight timelines that are being done in these instantaneous launch windows. This is the first night of a new launch window period that they do have for Electron. It's about a 15-day window, just double checking that here. It's about a 15-day window that they have, June 27th to July 14th, almost 20 days there, that they have an instantaneous window that they are able to launch in to try to get Capstone on its way. But everything is looking good so far. Road closures are already in effect on the land, and the marine safety zones are now being cleared. Airspace will be cleared at the T-minus 30-minute mark. And we'll go from there. I'm going to take a really quick pause in the commentary here. We're going to patch in Angry Astronaut, and I will be right back. But stay with us right here on the launch pad as we bring you our full live launch coverage of Rocket Lab's Capstone mission, Rocket Lab's first mission to the moon. Stay with us. And if you're just joining us, welcome here to the launch pad, our live launch coverage of Rocket Lab's Capstone mission with NASA. We are now joined by the Angry Astronaut. How's it going?
Good morning, everyone. My God, now I know what everybody in the Pacific Rim feels like when they tune into my live streams, and I have no idea why you do it, because I'm certainly not worth it.
Wow. We're glad to have you here. We were saying, it's the middle of the night for us here in North America, but an exciting mission, so worth the middle of the night coffee to be up, and hopefully see a good launch here today. Everything looking well. You excited for today's mission? Kind of what you feeling heading into this? It's been delayed a little bit.
How long has it been delayed? To be honest, I've been awake for 20 minutes, I think.
No, no worries. The launch, not today, but just the actual capstone mission in itself. Over the last couple months, we've seen it slip a few
Oh,
times, just being prepared.
you know something? NASA cannot afford to have this thing go wrong. It's simply not in the cards for them. If anything goes wrong with this mission, I mean, this is the first major mission for Artemis. The first. They haven't had any of the CLIPS missions go yet or anything else. There may have been something minor that's happened. But this is the first Artemis mission. It's absolutely vital that they get this done before they can deploy the Lunar Gateway. So they gotta have it 100% right, or it's gonna put Artemis in a rough state of affairs. So this is a very very critical mission.
Yeah, it's a really good point, a really unique orbit they're going into, to get some of that data for the Lunar Gateway, and with SLS, hopefully just a couple of months behind it. It'll be interesting to see just this Artemis program really starting to get underway here quite quickly. Is there something with Capstone at all specifically you're most looking forward to, or even just with SLS with Artemis 1?
Well, I mean, this is the first mission, to my knowledge anyway, that Rocket Lab has ever attempted significantly beyond Earth orbit. So this is uncharted territory for them, for the Electron, for the Photon spacecraft. And also, even though Artemis 1 is going to be orbiting the moon, it's not following the same retroactive halo orbit that, or retrograde rather, it's early retrograde halo orbit that Capstone's following. So this is there's a lot of cool things about this mission. We've never tried an orbit like this. All it is a bunch of numbers and figures. We really don't know what this orbit's going to do. If it's going to be stable, we think it is, but we don't know.
And even maybe just informing me, is there why so important to have an orbit like this one rather than kind of something we've seen before? It's very large orbit, coming down only 3,000 kilometers all the way out to 70,000 kilometers. It's quite a elliptical orbit, which is rare to see.
There has been a lot of debate on this orbit as to whether or not this, in my opinion, actually, this is the wrong orbit. I think that they should park the Lunar Gateway at a Lagrange point. It makes more sense. It's going to be more stable at a Lagrange point. So however, this orbit is going to allow a very close pass over the. So there's many advantages to it, but one of the main things is the very close pass over the moon, and that allows for a lot of real time control of devices on the surface, little rovers and other things that the astronauts are going to be using when they are not actually on the surface. And also, if you're making a really close pass over the moon, then you can deploy your lander already in a pretty low lunar orbit in order for it to land on the lunar South Pole. So there are certain advantages to it. I just think they should have put it at a Lagrange point personally.
It seems like a long one with the 6.5 rough days. At least that's the current one. We'll see what we get from Capstone, but it seems like a long time because if you're dropping someone off at the surface compared to what we did in Apollo, that's a big jump right away if that's what we're doing with Gateway. Obviously, it'd take a while for Gateway to be built, but it's happening pretty quickly.
Well, it also seems pretty likely that even if Gateway isn't built for Artemis 3, they're still going to use the same orbital configuration for Orion while it orbits, while Lunar Starship descends to the surface. So yeah, you're right. It is a long stretch of time, and that is what makes this different. I mean, the first Apollo mission stayed for a few hours. Apollo 11 was there for hours. This is going to be there for a long stretch, really without realistic hope of rescue. Or it'll be a lot more difficult to intercept the station. That's for sure if they have to leave earlier. So yeah, it's dicey.
And how do you feel about the landers that we're looking at? Do you think we're going to be ready for Lunar Starship in 2025? It looks like at this point they're now targeting. Do you think it's even going to happen in 2025? Because, Capstone's that first milestone, but we've got a couple more to hit before we get back on the ground.
Oh, everybody's gonna hate. But if anybody who watches my channel, they know that I tend to be a pretty conservative voice when it comes to new technology. I really don't think Starship will be ready by 2025. I mean, we're just theoretically getting to orbit late this year. I don't think we're going this summer. I think we're going late this year at the earliest. And then at that point, we've really got to get launch and return mastered, launching it and reusing it, all of that needs to be, pretty down pat before we can even talk about orbital refueling. And then the whole orbital refueling process, that's highly complicated, something we've never done before, especially on a large scale in orbit. I mean, we know the theories, we've run the math, but that doesn't mean, we're going to be able to do it easily. So I really don't think that that's something we figure out by 2025. I think it'd be really pushing it. I'm thinking 2026 at this point.
I mean, we did the math on the expiration of the SRBs too, but we just write waivers for those. So we'll see what happens with those. I saw a couple questions in the chat. Just how large is Capstone? It's actually really quite small for it. It's a 12U CubeSat. Dimensions are 34 by 34 by 61 centimeters. So a very small satellite, but going to get some very critical data there in the chat. Looks like NASA will get up and running here in just a couple of minutes, so we'll patch them in. But from what we've seen with Electron, the last chunk of time for it's been pretty successful in its missions. But if we look at the first kind of 20 missions, it was 6 or 7 good and then an issue. How are you feeling about Electron itself and Photon? I mean, it's the first lunar Photon, but actually being able to get Capstone on its way, very different mission for Electron.
Well, I'm a Rocket Lab fan. There's no question about that. However, I may be a little bit biased. No financial advice being given, but I have a fair number of shares of Rocket Lab stock. So I really believe in what Peter Beck is doing. But at the same time, their success rate has not been, incredibly good. It really hasn't. They're in the low 90s on their success rate, and it's very impressive that NASA has decided to put this incredibly important mission in the hands of this rocket. But at the same time, Peter Beck knows what he's doing. His people know what they're doing. They know how absolutely vital this mission is. And I think they're going to pull this off flawlessly. I think they're going to do a great job.
I feel the same every time I see Peter Beck speak or unveil something. It's I feel confident in their team. They don't rush into things, but it's still interesting seeing NASA take these risks. We saw the Astra mission just a couple weeks ago, and we saw how that went. Today's going to go well. That's how we're all hoping and thinking. But it is interesting seeing NASA, start to take more of these risks on newer vehicles because they have to get their payloads up there. They can't wait, and they don't really have an option. Other than SpaceX at this point. And I don't think SpaceX would have been an option for this other than on like a dedicated mission. Could it have been?
I'm sorry. Can you please? I was about to say something. Then please repeat the question. I apologize.
No worries. I don't think SpaceX could have been an option for Capstone other than on like some sort of dedicated mission or with some sort of special, third kind of stage to be able to get Capstone on that ejection, which at that point probably wouldn't have been financially made sense to, right?
No, not at all. It would have been Falcon 9 would have cost, heck, probably 7, 8 times as much money to deploy this satellite, unless there were lots of other people that wanted to deploy satellites to that same halo orbit that Capstone's going to in cislunar space, which is nobody. Then yeah, it wouldn't have been cost effective. So yeah, I mean the choices really were Rocket Lab and Virgin Orbit, and Virgin Orbit is an even newer kid on the block than Rocket Lab is. So yeah, and so yeah, this is beyond exciting. It is without question the most important small launcher kind of mission that's ever been attempted. So this is cool stuff. This is really big league stuff.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, NASA started their feed here. Looks like it's gonna be one of these maybe more NASA led streams, but they were showing SLS out on the pad, all lit up tonight with Orion sitting out there, and now showing a bit of B-roll of Electron as we head towards launch. About 4 minutes away from the targeted liftoff, but everything on schedule here. If you're just joining us, though, welcome here to the launch pad. You're joining us for our live launch coverage of that rocket on your screen there, the Rocket Lab Electron, as it gets ready to take its first ever payload to lunar orbit. Partnership with NASA for their CAPSTONE mission. We're joined this morning by the Angry Astronaut. If you haven't yet done so, head on over youtube.com/the Angry Astronaut. Definitely subscribe to him. Some really great conversations and discussions on everything that's happening as we get into this really busy era of space exploration. There's that countdown now at the bottom right of your screen.
This is just a beyond exciting moment for all of you Kiwis watching right now. And I have a lot of viewers in New Zealand. Good morning, and I am so excited for New Zealand right now, even though Rocket Lab is officially an American company, just to get those American military contracts. Let's be honest, guys. This is a New Zealand company, and this is huge to see the little nation of New Zealand accomplish things with a small sat launcher that nobody else has been able to do. That's cool stuff. That's cutting edge stuff, and that's what I like to report on my channel.
Yeah, there really isn't another rocket on the market right now that's as reliable as Electron. I was trying to think about it. There wouldn't have been another option to launch Capstone that would have been this financially made sense and just its functionality.
Yeah, no, the only other option would have been Virgin Orbit, but by when Capstone was being planned, Virgin Orbit hadn't even successfully sent up a single mission yet. So that would have been a really stupid gamble, actually. I mean, a very risky one. Virgin Orbit is doing a good job right now, but they certainly weren't when this mission was being planned. So yeah, Rocket Lab, you're right. They're the only game. Astra, by the way, you mentioned them. There is a huge difference between Rocket Lab and Astra, and all due respect to anybody who likes Astra out there, but Electron and Rocket Lab is in-house produced engines, 3D printed, engines, and high quality materials, all of which are made and manufactured by Rocket Lab, whereas Astra is using inexpensive off-the-shelf products that they themselves didn't make. And you're seeing the difference in quality today. You really are. We'll see if Astra can get to the point to where they can use that kind of equipment to a high degree of success. But right now, I think Electron is showing us all how it's done.
Well, and I saw a question in the chat here, and I don't have the answer. I'm wondering if you do. Do we know how long Capstone's actually going to be able to operate in this new orbit? Is it, it's going to take it a couple months to get there, But do we know how long it's going to actually last, roughly?
That I don't know actually. That is a very good question. I do know that it is a lengthy mission, simply because they're using a high efficiency approach to get to the moon. This isn't one of those 3-day missions like Apollo was, getting to the moon really quickly, because this is such an enormous distance for a launcher that doesn't have a lot of power. Then you have to use a different sort of trajectory to get to the moon. So the length of the mission is going to be substantially longer than your typical moon mission. But I don't know exactly how long that goes. But I will see if I can find that out for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a quick search here too. I know it says roughly the primary mission. Okay, it looks like from NASA the primary mission is 6 months, but they think they may be able to add an additional year onto it. Sounds about right for a CubeSat. Yeah, the longer the better. But I mean, I'm wondering how much Capstone actually costs, because if it works and we're getting good data, what's saying NASA couldn't launch, another one on an Electron to, almost like part 2 of the mission, should we need it before we can actually get stuff in lunar orbit into that newer unique orbit. Or who knows, we get there and it's not a good orbit. I guess what would be the path forward from there? We'd have to look at other orbits.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, they'll go to Lagrange point 1. There was a strong argument for Lagrange. And for those of you who don't know, Lagrange point is essentially a parking lot in space. It's a space between us and the moon that remains stable because of gravitational forces. And so if you put something into that location, it's going to essentially stay put while it's in orbit. So things don't drift away, etc. Lagrange points are an excellent place to put space stations. Again, that's why this orbit surprises me a little bit. But that would be our second option, I think.
That would make sense. We know it's stable. We've been to it before. They're actually showing on screen now just how unique of an orbit this is that they're going into, and kind of the crown that it forms as it orbits around, and they'll eventually build this lunar gateway station. Do you think gateway is going to be a key part of Artemis, or do you think it's kind of going to be just a transfer point, or do you think we'll see something like a mini ISS get developed and actually have quite a bit of lunar orbit science be performed?
No, that's a loaded question. This is a very, very controversial topic. There's an article that just came out recently, actually, that says cancel the Lunar Gateway in order to save money, allow us to perform more missions, because some of those missions have to be deploying the gateway, etc. In my opinion, if we don't have the gateway, Artemis will be canceled, just like Apollo. I think the longevity of a space mission, as ISS has demonstrated to us, if you have a permanent space station that's being occupied a good portion of the time, and they need to change the configuration of the mission, by the way, to have people on the gateway more than they currently are. But if they were to do that, there's no way this will ever be canceled. They're never going to decide to deorbit a space station that has astronauts on it performing exciting science every day and sending that back. That's going to be way too popular with the public.
Just why we've seen the ISS keep getting extended. No one really wants to see the ISS kind of wrap up. It's had quite a journey, and it's a weird idea to think in a decade or so it won't actually be there. But no, that's a really good point to it. So we'll have to kind of wait. A lot of this is wait and see. It's been planned. Now we're in that actual prepare and execute stage, and we have to wait and see what happens with Capstone to give us some ideas.
I'm beyond excited. Sorry, I had you muted for a second. I am beyond excited about this. It's like I say, this is step 1 in the whole Artemis mission, and then hopefully we're going to have step 2 with SLS. And everybody knows that I've got really mixed feelings about that rocket, but Anyway, still, if Artemis 1 goes off without a hitch, 2, if they manage to orbit the moon, bring it back, everything works out well, and Capstone shows a stable orbit, the rectilinear halo orbit works out well, then I think we got a really good chance of Artemis, moving forward and nobody daring to capture it, or not capture it, but rather to cancel it at that point.
Absolutely. I'm going to patch in NASA here really quickly. They're actually with a demo of the Capstone here for a second.
System down here. It's got an antenna that talks to the ground here. This is the antenna that talks to the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, another satellite in orbit about the moon. Solar panels. These extend, so this isn't a fully unfurled solar panel, but yeah, that's right.
It's about right. The microwave oven was the analogy given, and it certainly looks like it's exactly that. Tell me, this is going into this near rectilinear halo orbit. How will it do that, and what's it going to do when it's there?
You bet. So the near rectilinear halo orbit is a challenging orbit to say, but it's a really impressive orbit for its operations. We use a low energy transfer to get this guy into that orbit, and it uses very little fuel to get there. When we get there, this is a model of what the orbit looks like. Hopefully we can see that.
Yeah.
So Earth is in the middle, Moon goes around, and we form this crown shape about the Earth there. And then this orbit is just fantastic for what it needs to demonstrate. There we go. And it takes very little fuel to get into this orbit using this certain type of transfer to get there. And then it takes very little fuel to get down to the surface of the moon. We might even be able to use it to go out to asteroids. It's a gateway, and we're demonstrating this as the gateway for the Artemis program.
We're seeing a beautiful shot of Capstone right there on the top of the Electron rocket. You're with Advanced Space. We've got that team as well that's online tonight. They'll really start working when the mission fires up. What challenges do you expect to find once this gets into its orbit?
So nobody has ever flown one of these orbits before. Now, we have demonstrated this in simulation many times. We're ready for anything, even contingencies, but spaceflight is challenging. So we're ready for anything. We're going to go head on and teach NASA every lesson we learn.
And there's your team waving at us live from Colorado. That's the Advanced Space headquarters in Colorado, where Capstone Mission Operations Center is located. A lively bunch tonight. Again, they're going to get working in 6 days.
That's right. That's right. I love this launch. It gives us 6 days to prepare between launch and the time that our team picks up the satellite on the way to the moon.
So tell me, what other lunar orbits were considered when you were first developing this? Because, NASA gave you the funding for this mission and then said, hey, check it out for us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we looked at a lot of different orbits like this, and they all had to have the same kind of requirements. So they all had to have a low fuel requirement to get this satellite, which only has so much fuel, into that orbit. Has to be a gateway, just like NASA's doing. And then NASA in general has tested out a lot of different orbits. We've landed on this NRHO because of its terrific viability.
And with this spacecraft here, when it maneuvers, it's these small little jets here at the bottom. Is that right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it has enough fuel to do everything we need. We have enough fuel for an extended mission as well. It's a monopropellant hydrazine system. Yeah, full spacecraft.
And so
Wanted just to listen in there for a second as I talked a little bit about it and ended up talking about what we were talking about there with the orbits. Of course, they're not going to talk about other ones that they've looked at, but this one that they've landed on. But it's quite amazing the amount of stuff they've packed into quite a small package that's on top of that rocket down there in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's a tiny little satellite, as we've seen, and yeah, I mean, it has to be. I mean, this is such a the Electron is only capable of 300 kilograms to low Earth orbit, so you can only imagine the how small of a satellite or a probe this has to be to get all the way to the moon. It certainly requires just about everything Electron has at its disposal, plus the Photon spacecraft. It certainly needs that as well to deploy this little satellite. So, yeah, this is putting the Electron through its paces. It's pretty cool.
I'll listen in here to Mission Control at Rocket Lab for a second.
Located just a couple of kilometres back from the launch pad itself on the Māhia Peninsula. This peninsula is culturally significant to local Māori people with ancestral ties to the land, so I want to acknowledge first the mana whenua, or the local people, for today's historic launch. Now, within range control, along the back row of the control centre, starting from the right of your screen and moving left, sits two of our Photon engineers managing the spacecraft's tank and communications, and our IT support engineer. Across the aisle is our senior launch conductor supporting the flight director based out of Mission Control in Auckland. Next to them are two engineers responsible for the health of the Electron rocket's engines and its reaction control systems. Their call names are Prop and Stage. So in front of them sit the engineers looking after Electron's guidance, navigation and control, and monitoring the state of the rocket's flight computers and software. Along the front row sits our GCs, or ground control operators, who monitor the launch pad's ground systems. And to their left, on the right of your screen, closest to the camera, are the avionics operators with eyes on the operational status of the rocket's electrical systems. Behind them in the middle are the range and launch safety officers, keeping a close watch on the launch pad's surroundings.
Looking into their multiple control rooms as they count down T-minus 40 minutes and counting until the instantaneous launch window to launch here this evening. Talking about, it needing to communicate with the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbit. We were talking about this actually in our Discord a couple of days ago, and I'm curious your thoughts. Why we only have one Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter? There's not actually a lot of stuff around the moon, which seems odd with how, not easy, but easy it should be for us to be able to get there. How much do we actually know about the moon now that we're trying to go back to it? And would you expect to see more maybe in the near future?
Well, we know remarkably little. There are so many things we've discovered about the moon recently, and a lot of the latest data we've received is from the Chinese. The People's Republic of China have, strangely enough, shown a lot more interest in the surface of the moon than we have. That's changing, but still, they're the ones who have put down a couple of rovers there. They're the ones who have done a sample return from the moon. We've never done that. And the sample return was impressive too. They got it there and then got out before the lunar night started. That was a narrow window of opportunity to do that. All very impressive. In the meantime, we've just haven't been doing anything. Nothing has landed. Nothing has performed a soft landing on the moon from the United States in half a century. I was fortunate enough to get to see the first spacecraft that will be soft landing on the moon in half a century, and that's the Peregrine from Astrobotic. They were nice enough to give me a spot in their press box. So I got to see that up close and personal. It's way bigger, by the way, than CAPSTONE. Way bigger. So yeah, it's changing, but yeah, it's for us. You go to Congress and say we need money to go to the moon. We went there 50 years ago. So instead, you gotta give them something exciting. We're going to Mars. We're going to Neptune. We're going to Saturn. That sort of thing. So yeah, it's just trying to educate people who don't care about space, which is the majority of people in Congress, to spend money on space. It's frustrating.
Well, we get so much from the space program, looking back at, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and even just Shuttle, the amount of things that we use in our everyday lives that have come out of the space program or have been developed because we need it in the space program. It's really incredible, the list of stuff. But yeah, very excited to see Peregrine get down to that lunar surface. One of our team has a payload on board there with Astrobotic, so we're excited to see that launch here once Vulcan's ready to go, hopefully soonish. But excited to finally see some things happening with the moon. I'm 26, so this is kind of stuff of dreams of getting to see us kind of have this new generation of moon activities, and then hopefully Mars activities not too far down the road, at least probably more privately. NASA's going to be a little bit till they get to the moon, I think. But do you think NASA's going to get to Mars, get to Mars next decade, or do you think it's going to take them a while to get out there?
Their plan is 2040. Personally, I don't think they're going to try to go to Mars until they have nuclear thermal propulsion. I think they're so concerned about that 6-month time frame and cosmic rays and the potential of a solar storm, what that would kill astronauts, that sort of thing. They want to minimize the amount of time that it takes to get from here to there. So then that's why I think they're aggressively spending money on nuclear propulsion right now. So yeah, I think that's their main target. Once we have practical nuclear thermal propulsion, and the first prototype, by the way, for that flies in 2026. So once we have that, I think NASA will want to go to the moon. I think, or to Mars rather. I think Elon will go faster. I think he's not gonna wait for NASA. He's gonna do it on his own.
Now, I don't want to get into spoilers, but have you watched For All Mankind? I feel like it comes up a lot when we're seeing this NASA private conversation. Are you watching the new season?
Not the new season yet. No, I'm not I need to subscribe to. I'm subscribed to so many stinking channels. It's embarrassing. So I really need to subscribe to Apple and get caught up on those episodes. But yeah, I've heard some really amazing stuff is happening in that.
Yeah, it's I won't give it away. It's not where I thought it was going to go this season, but it's really interesting seeing kind of a storyline have some parallels to what we're going through as we go through this kind of next generation of, is it commercial, is it private, is it commercial providing everything for NASA, which I think works really well for them. Let NASA be good at the science part of it. Let them have that, but let SpaceX and these other agencies develop the new rockets and technologies to actually get us there and deliver those payloads that are needed. That way NASA's money can go to the actual science itself, because as you said, we're not far from the moon, but we haven't landed something in 50 years. That seems really crazy to me.
From a Delta V perspective, Mars is not much more difficult than the moon. It obviously takes a lot more time to get to Mars, but as I say, in terms of Delta V budget, it's fairly similar. So that's it's one thing that a lot of people don't take into consideration with Starship and the refueling requirements and things like that to get to the moon, land on the moon, dock with the gateway first, of course, and then land on the moon, get back to the gateway, and then get back to LEO to be refueled. Pretty much takes a full tank of gas. So you're looking at, a dozen refueling missions unless Starship is capable of carrying more than 100 tons worth of fuel per mission. So it's not, getting to the moon, is easier in terms of time frame, but in terms of Delta V, it's still very difficult. Of course, Mars also has the atmosphere problem. That makes it a lot tougher to. As thin as the atmosphere is, it's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, we still have those 7 minutes of terror we always hold our breath through. It seems, about 6 years we get a new rover or so. So absolutely, definitely a difference there. That's a good call out about the Delta V. I hadn't actually compared them that directly, but that does make sense. But that time is such a huge thing. I mean, we've seen that even more recently with Psyche being delayed a year because of software is going to end up leading to up to a 3-ish year delay of its arrival, even after a year launch delay. So it's really interesting having these missions kind of opening these conversations of orbital mechanics and what it takes to actually get there. We can push it off, but it takes the time for it to actually journey there with at least the current engines that we have now. But hopefully some of those nuclear and things come online here by the end of the decade as they do these test campaigns.
Yeah, Psyche is very disappointing. I'm quite angry about that one. They've had a lot of time to prepare for that. Not to say that building these things is easy or anything, but when you miss these launch window opportunities, the consequences are dire. And think about what would have happened if we had had a similar mistake with Voyager 1 and 2. That would have been it. The whole, tour of the solar system lineup of all those planets isn't going to happen again for over a century. So, if they had missed that opportunity back in 1977, that would have been game over. So, it's disappointing to me now to see NASA miss these opportunities more frequently than they used to. Of course, Voyager 1 was very nearly a failure from the outset. If it wasn't for the Centaur upper stage, they used them even way back then, that mission would have failed too. So, it's all very interesting stuff, what NASA's done in the past and hopefully what they'll do in the future.
Yeah, and just for those just tuning in, to give you a little bit of an update what you're seeing on the screen, what we're talking about, welcome here to the Launchpad. My name is Zach, and you're joining us for our live launch coverage of Rocket Lab's historic CAPSTONE mission to the moon with NASA. And we're joined by the Angry Astronaut for today's historic launch, the first ever Electron mission to the moon, the first ever time Rocket Lab's launched their lunar Photon part of Electron, the first time we're ever going into this new orbit around the moon. So lots of firsts, but a major milestone in getting us ready to send people back to the moon in the next couple of years, and this time hopefully to live and stay and work and open up a whole new era of being on the moon. But if it's your first time here, don't forget to take a moment, engage that like and subscribe button. It's annoying to hear, but it does help us out. While you're doing it, head on over youtube.com/angryastronaut or the Angry Astronaut. I'll pull up your page there and subscribe to him as well. Some great discussions on the delays that are happening, but also some of the missions and their importance as well. So definitely check him out following today's launch. We know things don't stop in space, so a reminder, we do have our Cygnus undocking stream that'll get underway here almost simultaneously with Electron's launch. So after this, head on over there. You can rewind it, watch the replay of the undocking of Cygnus from the International Space Station, but crews are well into preparing the Canadarm to release the Cygnus here back to complete its journey. If you guys have questions, you can send those in the chat by tagging us at the Launchpad. We'll be answering those for the next little bit as we come down to T-minus 29 minutes and counting. Electron there on the left side of your screen, all fueled up down at the Māhia Peninsula in New Zealand at Launch Complex 1A. That's the original launch site of the Electron, and they are getting ready for liftoff with an instantaneous launch window at 9:55 UTC or 5:55 a.m. Eastern. CAPSTONE is an acronym. It's a big one. It's a mouthful. The Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment. We're just going to say CAPSTONE. It's way nicer. Is a very critical, very small satellite in the future of Artemis, testing out this new orbit. It's going to take 6 days for it to actually leave Earth orbit once it's launched here today to send it on a ballistic trajectory towards the moon. And then it has a targeted 6-month mission, but they have enough fuel on board that if everything proceeds well, they may be able to extend it up to an additional year. That small satellite weighing just 55 pounds, but very important. You're seeing a breakdown of CAPSTONE actually on your screen right now from NASA and I'm just going to say from NASA. This is very much a NASA stream than it is a Rocket Lab stream today, but it makes sense. It's a NASA mission. Rocket Lab filling in very much like we see with SpaceX, being just the launch provider, getting the payload there, but this is all in all pretty much a NASA mission with a number of NASA partners for this orbit out in that unique crown orbit. As we get down to about 35 minutes, or not even 35. 25 minutes.
No, we're definitely counting down. Hey, if I may, I'm glad that you mentioned the whole Cygnus thing. That is I'm not sure how many folks are aware of what happened with that, but disappointing. Cygnus was supposed to perform a reboost of ISS. That experiment failed after a 5-second burn. that aborted, and that's not what we need right now. Because right now the only people who have the capability to reboost ISS is Roscosmos, and Rogozin is not a stable guy at the moment. So we wanted to use Cygnus to try to reboost ISS to show that we can do it too, and we can't at the moment anyway, and that was pretty disappointing.
And I haven't. I knew they were doing it. I haven't followed it super closely. I knew they had the abort. Did they not get another chance before they're undocking it today to perform another one?
If they did, then that's news to me, and if they were successful, then I take it all back. That's great that that's the case, but
I'm
I've
curious.
been
I want to
following
say I saw someone said they were going to try, but I'm not sure I ever saw anything that they actually did it, because it's a tight timeline when you're getting ready for an undocking.
Maybe let me have a look here real quick and see.
But either way,
I
if it had an
see.
abort off the first time, that is something that is concerning, and it's a really good point. We don't have anything other than the Russians right now to boost the space station, and as you said, Rogozin has said quite a few things on the Twitters, and we hope none of them come true. But we do need to have that safety net of being able to boost the ISS if we want to keep it around for another almost decade before it's actually deorbited. Excuse me.
Thank you for correcting me. You're right. They pulled that off. I am really happy now. Wow, that was awesome. It was a 5 minute, 1 second burn that they managed to pull off, and it pushed the station up 1/10 of a mile at apogee, 5/10 of a mile at perigee. That's great. At perigee, that's wonderful. I was unaware of that. So good news. Thanks. That makes my morning actually.
Hey, there we go. And hopefully we'll throw an Electron launch as a cherry on top of it. I didn't know they
Yes.
had done that either. I knew right when it said they had boarded that there was talks on maybe having time for another one, but they do it so specifically on when they need to do it. So I haven't been getting ready for Capstone. Didn't see that, so I'm glad to hear that too. See a Cygnus mission, and we don't have many more of those, if I remember correctly, though. So it's interesting to me that
No,
they're
we
wanting to
don't.
use it to reboost when we don't have them for that much longer.
Yeah, well, that's the problem is we don't have any other choices. At the moment, the only other vehicles that are capable of ISS reboost currently in development is Starliner and Dream Chaser. Crew Dragon and Cargo Dragon in their current configurations cannot reboost ISS. They can be modified, but that will take time, and then you would also need to confer with NASA on the engineering of that. You can't just throw that stuff together in a few months. It would take at least 1 or 2 years to modify Dragon to do the job. So it's important that we have another alternative, and hopefully either Starliner or Dream Chaser does the job for us.
I'm really excited to see Dream Chaser get up there. Hopefully next year. I think Dream Chaser is a great vehicle, and I can't wait to see the cargo. And then hopefully Crew might not see Crew to the ISS, but we'll see Crew to some of the other new stations with them for sure. But you got to go see Dream Chaser in person and have been connected with them. What was that like? It's seeing not even a prototype, the first orbital vehicle of a whole new kind of class.
Yeah, for some reason that I'll never be able to understand, Sierra Space gave me an exclusive tour of the facility. I got to watch Dream Chaser being put through a whole battery of stress tests, being lifted and kind of swung across the hangar and things. Just watching it swinging across the hangar, it was just so elegant, graceful. It's just a beautiful ship. Ugh, it's beautiful. So yeah, I like I said, I have no idea why they let me do it, but they are wonderful people at Sierra Space. So it's a two-part tour that I have on my channel. And in addition to that, they're also going to let me come back, watch the launch, and also watch the landing of Dream Chaser up close and personal. So they've been really good to me. It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. Speaking of you coming down for Dream Chaser, are you going to try to
Yes.
make it down for the Artemis 1 launch? Any plans around that?
I'm heading to Great Britain on September 2nd, so it's entirely possible that Artemis 1 will happen when I'm across the Atlantic. However, if it happens in late August, I will definitely be there for Artemis 1. But if it happens while I'm in Britain, well, that's the way it goes. But while I'm in Britain, I'm going to be covering the first ever commercial launch from Western European soil, and that's the Virgin Orbit launch from Spaceport Cornwall, which is a monumental event in European spaceflight history. So I can't wait to cover that.
Absolutely. It's exciting to see Spaceport Cornwall come on board. Virgin Orbit getting 2 more planes, if I remember correctly, in the last few weeks. Hearing that story kind of come out of that system really coming online. They're getting ready to do stuff in Brazil, and really neat seeing that kind of different style of rocket launch, bringing new countries online without needing full launch complexes. You need a runway and a clear airspace, and you're going to be able to start launching small payloads up into low Earth orbit. And I mean, you said Capstone could have fit on it, so possibly even to the moon, opening up a lot of other countries being able to get into space.
Actually, in 2 years, Virgin Orbit will be sending a mission to Mars, and Rocket Lab will be sending a mission to Venus. The Mars mission is being put together by a consortium of Polish companies and scientific institutions. In my opinion, they're going to launch that particular mission from Spaceport Cornwall, just because it's a lot easier to ship your satellite to Britain than it is all the way to the U.S. So I think that's the first ever interplanetary mission launched from European soil, I believe, is going to be launched from Spaceport Cornwall here in a couple of years. Very exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing seeing these quote unquote small sat launchers, doing very large giant leaps out further. We see these transporter missions with SpaceX, deploying 112 into low Earth orbit, but seeing these small rockets really open up new opportunities. It's always amazed me how little activity that there is in Western Europe, and even now seeing Australia with some of these sounding rockets starting off with NASA starting to open it up. Space really got quiet for quite a while, but it's starting to pick up, and there's a lot more interest, it seems, from a lot more countries on trying to be able to even just get small satellites into lunar orbit or low Earth orbit, just to start.
Yeah, it's very exciting actually, and it's exploding really. I mean, it's the whole private spaceflight industry is blowing up in Europe. There are several new launch providers in Great Britain, several new launch providers in Germany. For example, a rocket factory Augsburg is going to have a rocket that's capable of a small sat, a launcher capable of lifting quadruple the payload of what Electron can lift. They're going to be very competitive, to say the least. But at the same time, they don't have the reusability that Rocket Lab does. They don't have the same kinds of materials and technology. So it'll be interesting to see how they stack up. But yeah, Rocket Lab's going to have some significant competition soon, which is why I think Peter Beck went for Neutron, because he knew there was going to be that competition. So he wanted to break into other fields besides just small sats.
Yeah, because they really were one of the first that kind of really started, well, not first, but one of the bigger ones that, really kind of started taking off and opening up this sector. And now many others are getting onto it. And so there's, it's going to take a while for Neutron to come online, but always looking to the future and not letting what you've said in the past hold you back, I think was a huge thing Peter Beck showing when, they announced Neutron. That was never their plan, but ultimately, it's what there's demand for, and they think they can do it. So they're going to, and I think that's a huge thing with space exploration, is not kind of setting these, set boundaries when you need to, but also be willing to look beyond those when there's opportunity or demand for different missions, because there's a lot of science still to be done in our orbit, but also in our solar system. And it's amazing that is it Electron, you said, the one that's doing it? Was it Venus in a couple years?
Yeah. Electron and Photon will be taking a very tiny probe to Venus, but Peter Beck has publicly stated that he believes that there is life in the Venusian atmosphere. So he's going to go and try to find out. It'll be the first mission of any kind to explore the atmosphere of Venus, actually looking for life. So if a private space company from New Zealand would be the first organization to discover life on another planet, wow, what a moment that would be. Just really quickly to talk about Neutron, they've upgraded the payload capability of Neutron from 8 metric tons up to 12 metric tons with a 5-meter fairing. What that means is they're capable of launching Dream Chaser now with that. They could launch Crew Dragon if they wanted to. There's a wide variety of human-rated spacecraft that Neutron now has the capability of, or at least in theory, of launching. And Peter Beck wants Neutron to become a human-rated vehicle. So that's going to be some exciting stuff as well.
Yeah, Neutron looks really exciting. When they announced that, I was immediately like, oh, that's going to be another rocket to watch. And I'm excited that it's going to be stateside. I hope they'll be able to launch it other places as well, but it's exciting to see it stateside, but not at the Space Coast, which may sound weird to many. The Space Coast is getting ridiculously busy with Falcon Heavy coming back. Vulcan, they want to see 2 a month kind of thing once it gets through its first flights. There's a lot happening there. You got SLS. Well, SLS is like once a year-ish. But, there's a lot happening there. So bringing on some other launch complexes in the United States is going to just give more opportunities to more people and more agencies. And Neutron also making sure that it's reusable and having that as a priority is really interesting. So lots of different things with Neutron that we haven't seen before that will hopefully push other companies forward in their designs and what's capable. But wow, launching a Dragon type thing and human rating it, that's going to be amazing to see on a Neutron rocket for a company that started with Electron.
Yeah, they're super ambitious. I'm beyond excited. And once again, I mean, this is what sets Rocket Lab apart from a lot of the other small sat guys is, different types of innovation and technology that the other ones aren't using, breakthrough, bleeding edge kind of tech, and also an ambition to do bigger, much better things in the future. Whereas a lot of their competitors are just all about, okay, let's get these small sats into orbit as cheap as we can and make as much money as we can, which of course is fine, but to actually have a vision like Peter Beck does, like Elon Musk has, really like Tory Bruno has as well. That's all really cool stuff.
Absolutely. And for those just joining us, we're T-minus 13 minutes and counting until Rocket Lab launches an Electron rocket from New Zealand at Launch Complex 1A, carrying NASA's CAPSTONE mission to the moon. It's going to take about 6 days before it actually leaves Earth and begins its journey to the moon, but going into a brand new orbit. For those also following along with Cygnus, that stream is going up here. We expect to see some live views from the station in just a couple of minutes. So pull up 2 feeds, lots of stuff happening. Space never sleeps, it seems, and it's just getting busier and busier. But you can see there a live view of Electron out at Launch Complex 1A, all fueled up and venting and ready to go here in about 12 minutes. And Angry Astronaut, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll stay with you through the launch if you're still free here. But for the last 10 minutes or so, we'll listen into hopefully mission control here as they go through their final poll checks and everything as they get ready. But maybe some final thoughts or feelings as we hopefully see Electron launch its first mission to the moon and see Capstone finally on its way.
No, I'm just honored to be here. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Once again, all my angry advocates watching right now, make sure that you subscribe to the Launchpad. And I'm just thrilled to be here and to be watching this with you. So let's go Rocket Lab. Godspeed.
Well, thanks so much. Absolutely, we'll stay with you through the successful launch here. It's a very quick deployment sequence throughout today's mission. I'll just pull it up here to confirm it. The photon separation, just 9 minutes 5 seconds into flight, and that photon igniting about a minute later for its first burn. It'll conduct another burn about T plus 50 minutes after, and then it will continue doing burns over the next 5 days to boost it onto its trans-lunar injection, putting it on that ballistic trajectory to the moon. So I don't expect Rocket Lab and NASA will stay live all too long but after the photon separation and ignition there, but so it'll be a quick one, but some of those big milestones obviously to watch for. First stage separation about just under 3 minutes into flight, and then that battery jettison at 6.5 minutes into the mission. We want to watch that. Those are kind of the 2 points that we've seen in the past where they've had any sort of issues. So that's where we want to see. But 9 minutes into flight, that's when it'll be confirmed into orbit. And almost immediately after, we see that photon separation and that new lunar photon taking over and beginning that journey out to the moon over the next 5 days here. But if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Launch Complex 1A in New Zealand, with Rocket Lab's getting ready to lift off an Electron rocket to the moon. If you guys have questions, you can keep sending those in the chat by taking us at the launch pad, and we'll work on answering those in the chat over the next 9 minutes or so here. But once we see NASA hand it back over to Mission Control, we'll listen back in to that final count. They will have a couple of their final polls, whether they are go or no go for this evening. It is an instantaneous launch window, so we're not looking for any holds here, with launch expected and targeting 5:55 a.m. Eastern, a nice middle of the night launch for all of us here in North America, or 9:55 a.m. UTC. Question coming in the chat about the Electron being heli-catched today. They are not going to recover today's Electron via helicopter or even by chute. It will crash into the ocean there. That's why we have the white lines on it rather than the red ones. I think with this being a capstone mission and such an important mission for NASA, they wanted all their focus on making sure this was the best Electron it can be, and not worrying about reusability at this point. They haven't nailed it yet, so they want to make sure that they succeed with capstone first. But hopefully we will see another Electron recovery attempt here. This is their 4th Electron launch of 2022, and we're only halfway through the year, so we'll hopefully see a few more this year. Have you heard of any other ones coming up in the... we'll keep an eye here and see what other ones are coming up.
Not that I'm immediately aware of, not that have really made the news. They definitely have some established customers. Black Sky, for example, is probably their most important customer, so they certainly have missions upcoming, but none that have the the exposure that this one does. This is, in my opinion, the most important mission that Rocket Lab has ever undertaken. This means a lot.
And they don't have any others with NASA as of yet. But if this goes well, we'll hopefully see some more head their way.
I think this will demonstrate to the world and to the space agencies of the world that you can send your missions out with small sat providers, especially with Rocket Lab, and it's in good hands. That's what I'm hoping for today. Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. And as we come down to about 6 minutes to launch, we'll wrap up our live commentary portion, listen into Rocket Lab Mission Control as they go through their final polls and countdown towards today's launch. But if you haven't yet, take a moment, engage that like button, and share out the broadcast as we get to these last few minutes of the countdown. A very historic mission for NASA, for the Artemis program, but also for Rocket Lab and Electron. So let's listen in to Rocket Lab Mission Control as we count down T-minus about 5.5 minutes until liftoff.
Including its propellant tanks, which is what gives Electron its sleek black look. The rocket is powered by 10 Rutherford engines, 9 at the bottom of the first stage, and a 10th space-optimized engine to power the second stage to orbit. The Rutherford engine is the world's first to use an electric pump feed cycle for orbital space travel, making use of electric motors and batteries to drive its propellant pumps. It's also 3D printed using additive manufacturing processes. Electron is also equipped with a third upper stage that serves as in-space propulsion to deploy payloads to orbit. In its most advanced form, this stage is called Photon, a spacecraft bus to support small satellite missions even beyond Earth orbit. It's to this structure that the CAPSTONE satellite is attached, ready to be carried on its way to its lunar destination in near rectilinear halo orbit.
T-minus 5 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock, and from here the launch team will move on to some of the final milestones and checks of Electron, Photon and CAPSTONE before liftoff. The mission will launch from Pad B today at Launch Complex 1, where we have 2 orbital launch pads within our private spaceport dedicated for Electron launches. Now, Rocket Lab launches typically deploy spacecrafts to orbits between 500 and 1,200 kilometers altitude above Earth's surface. But this time, as you'll know, Electron and our upper stage Photon will send the CAPSTONE spacecraft a little bit further than usual, some 1.3 million kilometers further. Around 9 minutes after liftoff, Electron's second stage will separate from Photon, placing the spacecraft bus and its CAPSTONE payload into an initial low Earth orbit of just 165 kilometers. Now, from this initial parking orbit, Photon's Hypercurie engine will perform a series of orbit-raising maneuvers over 5 days to stretch its orbit into a prominent ellipse around Earth. Now, 6 days after launch, Hypercurie will ignite one final time, accelerating Photon to allow it to escape low Earth orbit and set CAPSTONE on a course for the Moon. From there, CAPSTONE's journey to NRHO is expected to take around 4 months, with the CubeSats team at Advanced Space's Mission Operations Center commanding the spacecraft to fire its thrusters to adjust its course accordingly. Now, if we are looking back at the pad camera now, we can see that the rocket's strong back has retracted and has moved into the launch position. This launch platform structure is what holds the umbilical lines, providing power to the rocket, which will fall away as Electron lifts off the pad. You can see Electron's icy white stripes on the outside of the rocket there too. Those are because of the super cold liquid oxygen propellant on the inside of the rocket, which freezes water on the outside, causing it to form those distinctive icy areas along the rocket's black carbon composite body. Now, our last weather update also confirmed that the wind speed at T0 is expected to be good for launch, further minimizing the weather risk to today's mission. Now, as we get closer to the countdown, it is worth pointing out what kind of views to expect from launch today. As always, we'll be bringing you the live views you see on your screen from various cameras at the pad and at range control. However, for this mission, we won't have the typical onboard vehicle cameras you might be familiar with for Electron launches, and that is because this mission has extensive telemetry requirements. So to reduce the load on systems and operators, we've streamlined the mission down to essential systems only. Now, while we won't have those live vehicle feeds to show you, we will be broadcasting mission data and animations so you can keep up with the launch progress throughout the ascent. And now we are coming up to a critical juncture in the lead up to launch, the switch to the countdown auto sequence. The team are tracking no issues with the launch vehicle. Capstone and Photon remain healthy, and the weather is looking good. So at T-minus 2 minutes, very shortly, that autonomous flight computer on Electron will take over the launch countdown, followed by the call that LOX loading is complete on Electron. Then at T-minus 1 minute, we can expect confirmation that the vehicle's first and second stages are pressurized for launch. So, followed by that will be the iconic final countdown to liftoff at T-minus 10 seconds and engine ignition at T-minus 3 seconds. We'll hand over now to Mission Control and listen into those calls to launch.
Launch vehicle with fully on internal power.
Lunar Photon is on internal power.
LOX load complete. LOX system in recirculation. All helium anti-gathering disabled.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 first.
High flow engine purge enabled. Water deluge activated.
T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And lift off.
HVB discharge now.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
Entering burnout detect mode.
And Electron has launched from New Zealand, carrying Capstone, beginning its journey to the moon. Beautiful night launch from the Māhia Peninsula. Listening into Rocket Lab Mission Control.
At T+1 minute, and Electron is in the air and onward to the moon for the Capstone mission. That rocket is soaring through this nighttime sky, now past 14 kilometers in altitude in these past few moments. Now things look to be continuing nominally, which means that shortly Electron will come up against max Q, or maximum dynamic pressure. Now this is the moment when Electron will experience its most amount of mechanical stress as it travels through the atmosphere. And I can confirm from Mission Control that we have had max Q confirmed, so that was a successful pass through that milestone, and Electron is onward to low Earth orbit. So propulsion appears nominal on that first stage, and the Photon Lunar upper stage and Capstone spacecraft remain healthy inside the rocket's fairing. We are coming up soon on 3 events in the launch timeline that will occur in very short succession. So soon, the 9 Rutherford engines powering Electron right now will diminish their power and then shut off completely. That command is signaled by the rocket's flight computer and then called across Mission Control comms as MECO, or main engine cutoff. Now, once that action is complete, Electron will separate its first and second stages. The main booster will continue to slow and remain behind while the second stage carries on with the mission with the ignition of its single Rutherford
This is
engine.
looking beautiful. Just gorgeous. Everything is
And we have
looking
had MECO
optimal.
confirm,
You check out the little
coming up
counter
soon
down below
on
to
the
see how
fairing
quickly
separation for
this
the
rocket,
mission. So just to confirm from Mission Control Comms, we have
MECO,
had
oh
MECO,
wow, there we
and
go.
second stage separation, and it's carrying on now, as you can see in that
I mean, this
animation.
rocket achieves altitude so rapidly.
To the fairing separation of this mission. That is the jettison of the fairing halves or the rocket's
What an
nose,
incredible
and it sits on top of
moment
the second
for
stage.
NASA,
Electron has
for
not
the
passed
future
the
of
finish line. We
our
don't need that fairing. It
ambitions
served
on the
its purpose
moon
to return
and
the
for the
payload
nation
and
of
the
New
Photon
Zealand.
upper
This
stage
is
during
just
the launch to Earth's
awesome.
atmosphere.
Absolutely beautiful evening launch, and New Zealand has launched a mission to the moon, and some incredible telemetry that we're getting from Rocket Lab that we haven't seen before. There's fairing separation as well. It is well on its way, 3.5 minutes into flight, having already covered 120 kilometers in altitude, coming up on 9,000 kilometers an hour. Capstone is headed for low Earth orbit and then on to the moon.
Had a great start to today's journey to the moon. We have successfully cleared the pad at Launch Complex 1 just a few moments ago, and we are now well on our way to space, having completed that first successful pass through max Q, main engine cutoff, stage separation, and fairing jettison to reach this point now in the mission. Now, Electron's second stage remains attached to the Photon Lunar upper stage carrying CAPSTONE, providing it with that assist to the mission's parking orbit at 165 kilometers above Earth. The rocket's second stage is moving along nicely on its continued ascent, now traveling at a very fast speed of more than 9,000 kilometers an hour. Soon, the second stage on the Electron rocket, which is
I
powered
can't
by
wait
our
to see
vacuum-optimized
Photon
Rutherford
separation.
engine. Soon, the batteries on that engine will need to be swapped
Same
out.
here, the first lunar Photon in space now, and getting ready for its separation here in about 4 minutes time. As you said, a very quick to orbit and very quick to have even separation from both main parts of the Electron rocket.
These ones get depleted of power, and we'll need to swap them out with a new set to keep the system running. We call that
As
a
far as the
battery
visuals are concerned, we get so spoiled by what SpaceX does. They definitely make a major media event out of their launches, and I'm sure that it's in post-production we will eventually see a lot more than we're seeing now, which of course is CGI stuff. But this is all very sensitive proprietary technology here. Something goes wrong with it, I don't think NASA wants us to watch that happen. So
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. So there's reasons why, and I think that once SpaceX sends their first mission to the moon, that sort of thing, we may not get live visuals of some of that stuff either.
I would agree. They'll show some of it, but there's definitely parts that we'll see, after that they'll release at times, just like we've seen with even some of the early Starship hops and stuff. But we're coming up on about 30 seconds away from battery hot swap, so we're going to listen in a really key milestone in Electron's second stage as it continues, and only about 3 minutes away from lunar photon separation. Battery hot swap, 15 seconds.
And there we have the call
Stage
that
two
battery
propulsion
hot
is
swap
holding
on the
nominal.
second stage was successful. Now, next we should expect to hear one of our operators in mission control call out that Electron is orbital, indicating that the rocket is in the right place ahead of stage separation. So SECO, the acronym for second engine cutoff, and the subsequent stage separation follow relatively the same procedure as main engine cutoff.
And once again, welcome and thank you all of my viewers from the Angry Astronaut who have joined us today. Make sure to subscribe to the launch pad.
And same from the launch pad to Angry Astronaut. We're thrilled to have you here. It's been one we've both been counting down a long time too, so we're glad to have you here. 2 minutes until Capstone's really on its way. by itself.
Just the first orbital phase for this CAPSTONE mission, with Photon and CAPSTONE's orbit continuously raised higher and higher over the next few days, with a series of engine burns on the upper stage. I'll go into more detail about Photon's phasing orbits and CAPSTONE's path to the moon shortly, once Electron has completed MECO and stage separation. Let's listen into mission control comms.
To answer the question, yes, CAPSTONE does have a camera. Just may not be active right now, or we may not be getting a live feed to it.
One minute to photon separation, passing 22,000 kilometers an hour.
Entering burnout detect mode.
So a quick check on the speed and altitude of this mission. We are traveling at more than 23,000 kilometers an hour. And while on the right you can see the altitude is at 175 kilometers, what goes up must come down, and we will lower ourselves into that 165 kilometer parking orbit very soon.
Seeker confirmed.
So with the Rutherford engine cooling down, that tells us that second engine cutoff was successful on Electron's second stage. And the Photon lunar upper stage has now departed into its low Earth orbit with the moon-bound CAPSTONE spacecraft on board. Now, as a reminder from here, Photon is in charge of the mission. With its relightable hypercurie engine, Photon will begin maneuvering into a parking orbit just above substantial atmospheric drag, but below the Van Allen radiation belts. It is the perfect, stable platform from which to prepare for lunar departure. Now, once Photon is in the correct orbital alignment, the hypercurie engine will ignite again, performing a burn to lift the highest point of Photon's orbit, the apogee. Now, as it gains altitude and also loses velocity, and so what goes up comes back down as Earth's gravity pulls it back towards the planet. When it reaches the lowest point, or perigee, once again Photon's hypercurie engine ignites to increase velocity and raise its apogee higher. So if you've ever been on a swing set, swung to the top, came back down, and then kicked your legs out to throw your weight forward to reach even higher on the next swing, then you've followed similar principles to what our Photon upper stage will be doing in space. Now, as these phasing orbits get bigger, they take longer to complete. The first will only take around 90 minutes, while the last one will take around 15 hours. Then on the final phasing pass, Photon will ignite hypercurie for a precision translunar injection burn, accelerating the upper stage and CAPSTONE to a top speed of nearly 11 kilometers per second, fast enough to break free of low Earth orbit on its way to the moon. The speed Photon is traveling at this point will shoot it well past the moon's orbit and to the edge of the Earth-Moon system on a transfer orbit. Lined up with the sun and using its gravitational pull to shape Photon's orbit to match speed with the moon, CAPSTONE will then be deployed and carry on the mission solo. And so with those first few hypercurie burns scheduled in the coming hours, I'm going to send it back to Daryl and the team at the Kennedy Space Center. Daryl, I know you weren't here in person, but how was that for you guys over at KSC? My heart is still pounding. I know our team is thrilled at the successful first phase of this mission.
Oh, absolutely, Muriel. Wish I could have been there to watch it with you. And boy, what a beautiful picture from here. And congratulations so far on the success of the launch. Obviously, a lot more steps to go before CAPSTONE gets into its orbit, but looking good so far with a great beginning. Quick note on this rocket right behind me, the Space Launch System, NASA's Mega Moon rocket. It completed its wet dress rehearsal. It will be returning to the vehicle assembly building in just a matter.
Well, and while NASA decides to talk about SLS during an Electron mission coverage here, Angry Astronaut with the Electron has launched, completed its mission, at least getting lunar Photon up into orbit. Thoughts on what we saw there? It looked like a pretty beautiful launch. Really smooth count through all of it, and lunar Photon is now beginning its journey over the next 6 days of raising that orbit to get it on a ballistic trajectory out to the moon. See who NASA's patching in here. But your thoughts?
Flawless. Couldn't have been better from what I've seen. I mean, everything went spectacularly. I mean, obviously, unlike many, rocket launches that we see, but like, for example, with an Atlas V, where you get the primary stage and then the Centaur, and then once the Centaur finishes its burn, the mission is essentially over for ULA. As long as Photon stays attached to that satellite, then RocketLab's still engaged in the mission. Photon adds a whole new dimension to this mission. A remarkable piece of technology, especially given how tiny it is, what its capabilities are. Amazing stuff. So yeah, there's we're not over the hump yet. Photon still has some things to do, but wow, amazing accomplishment from Rocket Lab, Peter Beck. I couldn't be happier.
I don't think I could have said it better. Do we know when Photon will release Capstone? Or I'm assuming it will.
Yeah, it will, but I don't know the final moment when that happens. I don't know when those detach. I should know.
It's not in the Rocket Lab press package, so I was wondering if you know. So maybe it's something they haven't said yet, because it'll have to do it at some point. But we know it's got 6 days of burns. It's got at least it'll be burning right now. The Photon's Hypercurie engine will be conducting a burn now. It'll have a second burn at T plus 50 minutes, and then we'll be expecting at least a burn a day over the next 5 days before a final burn on the 6th day. So I'm sure we'll be getting updates from Rocket Lab over the next few days. I would assume almost after that translunar injection is complete is when we would expect separation, just to get rid of the extra dead weight. But we'll try to work on that and tweet it out or drop it in our Discord.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to depend on the propulsion capabilities of Capstone itself. The one nice thing about Photon is the fact that you can relight the engines so many times. So if you need minor course corrections, all that sort of thing, then Photon's going to do the job for you. So actually, no, I'm sorry. I actually have the answer for you. It is, it's happening really soon, actually. 20 minutes. Or I'm sorry, after the TLI. I'm sorry, to answer your question, after TLI, 20 minutes after TLI, then Photon and Capstone will separate.
That makes sense. That's awesome. That's great to have that answer. That's the one thing not in the press packet timeline that they included there, or at least not that I saw. So 6 days from now, and then 20 minutes after that, I'm assuming we'll get tweet updates from Rocket Lab's communications team, possibly even Peter Beck. I was looking on some of those live feeds into their control rooms. I didn't see him on any of them, but I'm sure he was there, maybe even outside looking, as a very exciting, historic mission for his organization. Just, with just a few years of launches underway, they're now onto the moon and have their sights set even further in the very near future.
Yeah, this is a moment that's propelling Rocket Lab to a whole new level. If everything on this mission goes smoothly, there's going to be a lot of space agencies looking to Rocket Lab, because, I mean, you're talking about a mission to cislunar space for less than $10 million. It's kind of hard to beat. That's some amazing stuff.
Absolutely.
To give you a couple of real quick pieces of information, I'm actually got that information from TechCrunch about the separation. The near rectilinear halo orbit apparently has very easy access for current launch vehicles for a staging point. There's advantages to that. It's environmental advantages to test for radiation and cosmic ray exposure. That's kind of sounds nasty for the poor astronauts on Lunar Gateway, but if they're going to go to Mars, then we need to know, how bad this is going to get. So it's good for that. It provides a favorable vantage point for both observations not only of the moon but Earth, Sun, and deep space. So it's intended not only for lunar operations but beyond. Also, the orbit provides a continuous view of the Earth, the way it's configured. So that means communications are nonstop, and you're never going to have those communications blackouts when it passes behind the moon, because it won't do that. And then finally, as I mentioned before, the whole surface operations advantage. From this orbit, it provides easy access for telerobotics, including on the lunar far side, which is something that we can't do from Earth, but they'll be able to do it from the gateway. So actually, this orbit has lots of pluses.
It really does. And there we have it. NASA has wrapped up their live coverage. So has Rocket Lab. Capstone on its way there. Thank you so much, High Desert, there for that super chat. Appreciate it. I completely agree. I love having the chats open to get differing opinions and on everything there for it. I know Nightbot's a little tight sometimes, so absolutely can understand that. And apologize if anyone's comments got deleted there, but we appreciate that super chat and support there. And what a mission to see, and excited for the next 6 days and the next 6 months to 18 months as Capstone really starts to open up and launch that Artemis program, because as we've said, this was the first true launch of the Artemis program, starting that next era, and excited to see what comes out of it. But Rocket Lab has wrapped that up. For those that were watching also, because we did mention it earlier, watching for the Cygnus coverage, NASA said they were going to cover it, and they never did. So we're waiting for confirmation on whether Cygnus actually undocked or not. They did delay it to today, based from yesterday, so we're waiting for confirmation on that. So stay tuned to our Twitter for that. But before we kind of wrap up here, a couple things we'll run through. As always, make sure you've subscribed to us here on the Launchpad so you never miss another live launch coverage, press briefing, docking, undocking, and everything in between. As well as we have some exclusive one-on-one interviews with some of the Artemis team that'll be coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you head on over and check out youtube.com/theangryastronaut. We've been thrilled to have him joining us throughout today. If you like what we do, you can consider becoming a TLP member by heading on over to our Patreon and joining our Discord. All those links will be in the chat there. We'll live tweet space news as it happens over on our Twitter, and it's a launch day, so you can get 10% off on our shop. All those links will be in the chat there. You can use promo code LaunchDay for that discount there. Now that all that YouTube stuff's out of the way, you always got to say it a couple times a stream. But as we wrap up, thank you so much for being here, Angry Astronaut. Any last thoughts for the community? We're thrilled to have your community join us here today. We definitely have to do this again in the future as we see a number of launches, and maybe one of these ones we can do it in person down at Kennedy or maybe in Europe sometime.
Absolutely. And yeah, I once again deeply honored to be here with you today. And God defend New Zealand. You guys accomplished a huge thing for spaceflight today. Awesome.
Absolutely. So excited to New Zealand's launch to the moon. That's pretty amazing, and excited to see what else comes from it. But I think that's going to do it for us here today, here at the launch pad. It's our mission to inform and inspire the explorers of tomorrow, because we believe that space is better together. And we've been joined by the Angry Astronaut here today, and this was our live launch coverage of the historic Rocket Lab Electron Capstone mission with NASA. Capstone on its way to the moon. Follow us over on Twitter to follow along with updates as Capstone completes its 6 days in orbit around Earth, raising its altitude before it ejects to the moon, and to stay up on all your space news updates. But for now, this is Zach and the Angry Astronaut signing off. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.